Hey, everybody, this is John Bruni, and we have a very inspirational guest today. And I can't wait to introduce her, and we're going to get to her in just a moment. But first, I want to share a word from our sponsors. The Pressing Limits podcast is brought to you by ZionMissionaryChurch.net, where you can listen and watch messages, you can share your prayer requests, or you can even find out how to plan a visit. And also by NeuroPowerSource.com. These are resources for your mind, your body, and your spirit. And you're going to find all the recommended supplements and gear that I use, including the Be Strong bands, the Juve 3.0 system, the Iron Neck, all kinds of stuff. You'll want to be sure to check it out. We are honored today to have our guest, Kirstie Ennis. She joined the Marine Corps at just 17 years old. Over the years that she served, she performed duties as a helicopter, door gunner, and airframes mechanic. On June 23, 2012, during her last deployment to Afghanistan, her helicopter went down. As a result of the crash, she sustained injuries that included an above-the-knee amputation on her left leg, facial trauma, traumatic brain injury, cervical and lumbar spine trauma, and bilateral shoulder damage. But her story doesn't end with her injuries. After more than 40 surgeries, she has accomplished more with one leg than most people will ever do on two. She competed as a Paralympic snowboarder and then ventured into mountaineering, where she hopes to complete the 7 summits by climbing the highest peak on every continent by 2021. And there is so much more to her story. She continues serving people through the Kirstie Ennis Foundation. She is also a stunt woman, an entrepreneur, a motivational speaker, but most of all, I think everyone would say hero. Welcome to the show, Kirstie Ennis.
Thank you. Well, that was quite the introduction. I appreciate it.
Oh, and again, just want to tell our listeners, we're so thankful for your service, and we're looking forward to you sharing your story today. And I just want to ask off the bat, what went into your decision to join the Marines at only age 17?
So I was actually finished with high school by the time that I was 15 and ended up going to a community college for 2 years, got my associate's degree. And I knew pretty much then and there that it was my time to go. From a very young age, I mean, we're talking like knee high to a grasshopper, toddler age. I knew that I was going to go into the military simply because I was raised by 2 Marine parents. I think that I'm one of the fortunate ones. Sometimes I feel like maybe I was cursed, but I truly believe that, I was raised by superheroes. So I knew from a young age that I was going to join the Marine Corps. My dad wanted me to at least get, my bachelor's degree and join as an officer. My mom, I was a royal pain in her ass. So she was just like, get out as soon as you're old enough. We'll see you later. After I did 2 years of college, I just remember like looking around the classroom and being like, I'm not challenged. And this isn't enough for me right now. So 4 months after my 17th birthday, I went to a recruiter's office and told them that I wanted to join. And the rest was pretty much history. My mom signed immediately, again, said good riddance, and I had to lie through my teeth to get my dad to sign. I got my way in the end. So
Can you tell us about that day? What was it like when that helicopter went down? I mean, can you tell us about that day and all that happened on that day?
Yeah, well, I mean, ironically, there was nothing special about that day, quite frankly. Being in the Marine Corps, being in combat, being in Afghanistan, you don't think twice about what could potentially happen. You're just worried about going out, doing your job, and making sure you and your guys, come home safe, come home alive. Normally, the routine missions that we would fly, you would never fly, into the, early evening like we did that night. You would never fly, broad daylight unless it was, absolutely dire mission. And, there had been some changes to the flight plan where I was supposed to go out later in the evening. And unfortunately, they said change of plans. You're not even going to be flying on your usual aircraft or any of that. But you're going out and you're going out now. And so I think when, we were turning up the aircraft and, I actually have pictures of me from hours before I got hurt. Like, I feel like we all kind of had like this weird feeling about what was happening, but there was never a fear or a hesitation about going out on our mission. And quite frankly, everything was going as planned. We bounced along to the fuel pits. We had a lead aircraft called Dash One. Mine was a second aircraft. I was in the left gun. Nothing, too out of the norm there. I was always in the left gun for the most part. And we went out, did the first part of our mission, our flight objectives, and then we came back to the fuel pits. We picked up 3 space available Army medics. So basically, we were transporting supplies and ammo and the likes of that nature out to some guys that needed some help on forward operating base Nowzad. And then we were going to do an extraction of Marines. And unfortunately, en route to this combat resupply mission, the helicopter that I was manning went down. And, I don't like to give too much credit to the other branches. We all like to hang a lot of shit on each other. But those 3 space available, those Army medics that just kind of piled into the back of the aircraft that night, those are the ones that actually saved my life.
Wow.
And I'll never really forget it. Everything just kind of went into slow motion. You could you could kind of feel like the helicopter wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing. You could, kind of hear some, the pilots going back and forth about what was taking place. And, but it was weird because even when I knew it wasn't right, and I was now looking at the ground through my night vision goggles at the rapidly approaching ground, it was still like I was counting the aircraft down as if I normally would. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mains on deck. And unfortunately, when I said mains on deck, in my head, that's actually when we hit the ground. And when I woke up, it wasn't like it wasn't praying or panicking. It was just like this, constant in and out, going in and out of shock, basically. And I remember rolling my tongue around my mouth and choking on grit, and just all my teeth were shattered. My jaw was gone. And at first it was like I was numb. And then I just remember hearing everybody start to scream because they couldn't find my tail gunner. My tail gunner tried to get to a seat in the back before we hit the ground. And then unfortunately he went out the back. And so it was just like, from that moment on, everything was in slow motion. And it was like, well, where's my tail gunner? That's all I wanted to know. And quite frankly, again, that Army medic that got in my face and kept me out of shock, I really think he's one of the ones that kept me alive. And then I also think the distraction of being like, where's my tail gunner? Where's my gunnery sergeant? Was also like, I stopped focusing on pain and everything that I was dealing with. And was able to kind of I guess focus on what was going on around me. And like you mentioned, as a result of the crash, I sustained some pretty severe injuries, full thickness facial trauma. They had to rebuild the right side. I had fractures in my cervical spine, damage to my arms, my ears, my eyes. And unfortunately, I keep losing more and more of my left leg. But I also didn't realize that that's what was wrong at first. I knew that I was hurt and I could feel all this shattered everything, but I didn't realize that I would be going home. And I didn't think twice about it until I saw my sergeant major and my gunnery sergeant standing there, staring at me and crying. And when I was in this makeshift tent hospital, on Camp Bastion. And I mean, I kid you not, I was combat meritoriously promoted to sergeant, literally as this was all going on. So in my mind, I think I shifted to, they can't send me home. They need me here. And when they came back and they said, no, you're done. Honestly, that was the hardest part of any of it, was leaving my guys, my unit behind as I got, shipped back home, this mangled mass. Definitely one of the defining moments of my life for sure.
Yeah. And did you at the time, and it's amazing how your sense of duty just takes over. Like you were saying, most people react in a crash would be much different, but all the training, your care for your brothers, all that stuff kicks in. And did you know, when did you kind of find out how bad it really was, your injuries were? I mean, at the time, did you have any idea how bad it was?
Honestly, as it all happened, I really didn't. I don't know if you want to say I went numb to it or whatever, but I even when they flew me from Camp Bastion, which is in the southern Helmand province of Afghanistan, and they flew me on to Kandahar, and they flew me to Germany. And you'll have to censor some of this, but I knew I was messed up, and they told me that I was going to lose my leg, and they told me that they couldn't do a lot of the surgeries that I needed orthopedically where I was, that I would have to get them when I got back to the States. But when I was finally like coherent enough, I was able to call home and, talk to my mom, but I had no jaw again. Like there was nothing there. There was two front teeth and that's about it. And so I tried to talk to my mom, and, I basically said, I'm coming home, and she just laughed. She didn't realize how bad my facial trauma was. And she was like, Kirsty, baby, you must be on a lot of drugs. I'll see you soon. And I verbatim said, F you, mom, and hung up the phone and refused to talk to anybody until I got back eventually to San Diego. And I think that's when I actually realized, like, hang on, people can't even understand what you're saying. Your back's in this huge brace. And when they flew me from Germany to DC, like they had to sedate me. Like that's when I went into like this full blown panic of, oh my God, you can't walk, you can't breathe on your own, your lungs are sticking together. Like that's when it all sunk in. I think, for a while it was just being in this fog. But as soon as they got me in the air from Germany to DC, and after I talked to my mom, I was like, okay, this is going to be something that changes your life.
And I don't think people understand how incredibly tough you are, and the fact that now you're overcoming all this, but on your flight all the way back to DC, you did it without pain meds, right?
Yeah, well, they couldn't give me anything in the air because of the head trauma. So like even when like from the helicopter crash, initially they couldn't give me, the morphine lollipops or any of that. So yeah, because they didn't know how bad my brain injury was and the whole nine. So yeah, it was pretty wild. Like actually that flight home from Germany to DC was rough. I was throwing up on myself the whole time. Like again, just like a sheer panic. So.
It's unbelievable. And like I said, just your courage, it blows me away. And one of the things that happened that was very interesting, that there happened to be a plastic surgeon volunteering your time. Is that right? When, you went through this incredible facial trauma because of the machine gun, and they just can you tell the listeners about that? To me, it's just incredible.
Yeah, well, no, I got incredibly lucky. So first and foremost, I've actually met him since, but when they wheeled me into the hospital, the first surgeon who took a look at me said, she's not going to make it. Give me the next dude. And so they started to treat, the other people that were on the helicopter with me. Well, then a British surgeon, plastic surgeon came in, and she said, no one touch her. And again, she was volunteering her time, this cute little older, British lady. Yeah, she was like, none of the corpsmen, don't touch her face. I'm going to handle that one. And sure enough, she came back in and she put my face back together beautifully. Don't be wrong, I can't feel my right side. I can't smile the whole way. I do have some pretty gnarly scars, but I mean, if she would have let the corpsman put my face back together, like my lips would be up by my eyeballs, for crying out loud. So, yeah, I'm extremely grateful for some of those people that got a hold of me for the first time.
And so it's not only what you dealt with as far as injuries, and I want to get into some of that if we can. This is a huge thing for people that are listening, because especially in the age of COVID and changes that have happened, how did you personally deal with the loss of purpose and identity as a Marine? And I think that's a big thing, because like right now people are losing their jobs, roles are changing. You had your whole life ahead of you. You had just been promoted, like you said. How were you able to cope with this sense of all of a sudden, who I am, my purpose, my identity has kind of been shattered? Can you share with how you were able to overcome that?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I'll backpedal just a little bit. So after I got hurt, I fought. They're called med boards, basically to, doctors in the Marine Corps kind of assess if you're going to be found fit for duty to move forward with everything. And I got my first unfit for duty, and I was like, oh, hell no. And I went back for the second one. They told me, no, we can't waive what happened to you from your neck up, like with your vision, your hearing, your brain, specifically, then your spine. Like you have to take a medical retirement. And I fought it 3 times, and finally, there was nothing else to fight. And then I think in that moment, that's when I really felt robbed, because the whole thing that got me through my recovery was like this hyperfixation on, I can still go back to being a Marine. But when they actually told me, like, no, this is it, you're done, and I was only 23 years old, I felt like I was robbed. I was robbed of my career, my memory, years of my life at this point, my leg, all sorts of stuff. And I really had to sit with myself, and none of it was easy. Don't get me wrong. Like, I went through the pits of hell, like the lowest of lows, the darkest of
Yeah.
dark. Um, but I had to sit with myself and say, okay, well, why did you even join the military in the first place? And the reality was it was to be of service to other people. And so when I took a step back and said, okay, well, I can still be of service to people. Sure, I can't go around kicking down doors and, going overseas and deploying and stuff, but I can still help people in another way. And quite frankly, whether you want to call it, being a moral masochist or whatever it is, the reality is if you can focus on what you can do for other people, your problems and your pain will dissipate. And that's what I did. Don't get me wrong. Like, I still had to be able to set goals and, personal initiatives and objectives and stuff like that. But by focusing on what I could do for others, I was rewarded in far greater ways than, anything that I have done to an extent, I guess, in the military. Yeah. And so that's what I did. I just rolled with it. I learned how to shift my perspective about what I was given, what I was dealt, and what I could actually use from that really crap situation to be able to pay it forward to other people. Yeah, I mean, that's really where that came from. I mean, the outdoors played a huge factor. Being able to go forth and try new things and have the courage to stumble and fail and get back up and try again. And yeah, just being able to say, what can I do for other people?
And it's such an incredible message, because they said people are in their own way. It's different, but they're experiencing their own minor traumas in what's going on, and losing that sense of purpose and identity. The model that you show, that path, I think is just such an incredible, incredible lesson for people. And you had to deal with the whole brain injury. Can you talk about what's the process behind that, relearning everything? Most people will never understand how difficult that would be. What was the process of dealing with all the brain trauma?
I lived for years at the hospital. And I went through hours and hours of vestibular therapy, cognitive therapy, speech therapy, obviously mental health, like hours a week. And I think also often people look at me and they're like right now, for example, I'm sitting in my wheelchair. People look at others and say, well, physically that must be terrible. Oh my God, she doesn't have a leg. She's in this wheelchair. That must be god awful. But the reality is my invisible injuries were the most debilitating, because ultimately, if I was unable to think for myself and express myself and then also keep my heart in the right place, I was never going to be able to overcome anything physical ever. And those types of things don't go away. I mean, to this day, I still go to speech therapy once a week. I still go to mental health all the time. And it's, you can't stop. Like, life with a brain injury or life with an invisible injury of any kind, like, it's going to be an uphill battle. It's not going to be handed to you. You're not going to get 6 weeks of recovery and call it a day like you would with a sprained ankle or whatever it is. So I think that's like one piece of advice that I could give to anybody dealing with any of these things right now related to COVID or personal lives. Like, don't be afraid to sit with yourself, be patient with yourself, and also, be willing to work for yourself, willing to try. I think being brutally honest with yourself, helps leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it's to me, it blows me away that you talk about speech therapy, because listening to you, you're so eloquent, you're so well spoken. It's hard to believe that you had to do that. It's amazing. It's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about this. What was the absolute turning point in this whole situation? I mean, it's been negative, 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 as far as things that have happened to you. What was the real turning point? Can you remember, like, there was a time when you knew, all right, here's the turning point. I'm flipping the script here. Can you tell us if there was one or what that looked like?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so like the first year of my recovery was absolutely brutal. I mean, it was miserable. I had never felt lower in my entire life. And I actually decided, around the same time I was, really learning that I was going to have to get out of the Marine Corps. And I decided that I was going to give up. I didn't want to live another day. I left this message with my grandma to, make sure and tell my parents that I loved them and the whole nine. And I tried to take my own life, and I am extremely fortunate that I actually woke up in the hospital. And my dad came to me and he said, "You've got to be shitting me. The enemy couldn't kill you, and now you're going to do it for them." And honestly, that's when the light bulb went off. That was like, oh my God, what are you doing? Don't get me wrong, for anybody out there that is dealing with, suicidal ideation or any kind of mental health issues, it's really challenging to actually like take hold of your reality. And I understand how someone can feel like by taking their own life, they're actually being selfless because they feel like they're a burden on other people. And that's exactly how I felt. But in seeing the hell that I put my parents through, my little sister, my grandparents, all that, by them realizing that I felt so alone when I really wasn't, was when, again, that light bulb went off. Like I still had so much to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
I still came home. Sure, I was damaged, beaten up, and broken, the whole nine, but I still had a life, and it would be very selfish of me, quite frankly, if I did throw in the towel or if I did just give up altogether. At this point, now I look at my life and how far I've come and I say, I'm living, breathing, getting up every single day for the guys and girls that never made it home. And I know it's super, super cliche and I kind of hate the phrase, to be honest, but there is somebody out there that always has it worse. And that person who does have it worse, figure out a way to help them. Because again, that's going to be like what makes it, what encourages you to get through another day. Because you're going to see their struggle and you're going to learn to be appreciative of everything that you have, good and bad.
That is so powerful. And we are all glad that you are here because you think about the lives. I mean, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but have you ever imagined at that time the amount of lives that you would change? I mean, you have impacted so many people. I mean, at the time when you're going through all this, I mean, could have you in your wildest dreams imagined that you were going to impact and change the lives of so many people?
No. I mean, I think about it all the time. I had no idea that my suffering and my struggles and everything that I went through mentally, physically, and emotionally would lead me to a fraction of where I am right now. No idea.
Yeah, because I think the biggest thing that people take away when they hear your story or just listen to your unbeatable spirit is it gives them hope. I mean, I think most people, when they listen to this or they're watching this, they're like, my goodness, if she can make it through that, I can overcome whatever it is I'm facing because it's not going to be near anything that she has faced. And I think you just give so many people hope. And I start to look at this as, man, the journey you started to take. I mean, here you go from the hospital. Next thing we hear, you're getting into snowboarding. As somebody who is out of Florida, how did you get into snowboarding? And then how did you do it with your leg injury? When I start to read these things, I'm like, I'm not even sure how this is possible, Can you share with us that?
Yeah. Well, to your point, being from Florida, I didn't know anything about winter or snow for that matter. I just knew that I needed to get out of the hospital. So there was an organization, a nonprofit, that came into my hospital room one day and said, "How do you feel about learning a winter sport?" And my mind was like, "Sure, whatever, just get me out of this place." And admittedly, I went to my doctors and had to get a medical clearance, and they did clear me to sit ski. But when I arrived, I won't drop any names, at this specific ski resort to be a part of this program, no one asked me for my medical clearance. So I'm like seeing people buzz around on snowboards, and I'm like, you know what, that looks really cool. Let's go ahead and learn how to do that. And so yeah, when I mentioned it, no one asked for my medical clearance. So I was like, all right, I'm going for it. And I picked it up so quick. Not to toot my own horn on that one, but like I picked it up so quickly. And it was just a situation where I felt independent again. No matter what my injuries were, again, mental, physical, or emotional, I had this new confidence that I could go forth and do anything, something that I was never even doing before, uninjured, if you will. And from that moment forward, I would sneak away from the hospitals on, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when there were limited personnel there. And I'd go up to Big Bear in Southern California and I'd work my tail off to snowboard. And ironically, there was a gentleman out there one day and he said, "How long have you been snowboarding?" And I told him not very long. And he ended up being the head coach of Team USA's Paralympic border cross and bank slalom teams. And he was like, "You've got potential." And I think by him saying that was like, okay, I'm going to go forth and I'm going to figure out how to kick some butt in snowboarding. And yeah. And then from there, the rest was pretty much history. I kept at it and didn't stop. And in 2014, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I packed up my bags and said that I was going to live part-time in Colorado and chase some snow. And that's what I did.
Now, did that, inspire you at all for your love of the outdoors, of the whole mountain, like just being out in that kind of, environment? Did that inspire any of the mountaineering?
Absolutely. Well, and I think just like everything else in life, well, I'll rephrase that. Competing in snowboarding served its purpose. It held me accountable. It gave me goals to work towards each day. It gave me, these medals and these accolades and these praises, for my hard work. But what it didn't give me is just that opportunity to continue serving and helping. So eventually I took a step back from snowboarding and decided that I really wanted to do something in the big mountains. And initially it wasn't going to be climbing and mountaineering. It was going to be more backcountry, more, extreme snowboarding. And in 2016, I had ended up having to have another surgery. And so in turn, I was going to lose snowboarding altogether for that season. And a buddy of mine came to me and he said, well, you were supposed to be climbing some of these other big mountains next year. How do you feel about, going to Kili and, climbing the tallest mountain in Africa? And I said, absolutely. I was all about it. And in the midst of all this, we ended up raising $150,000 for clean water for the East Tanzanians. And that's kind of when that light bulb again went off, because it was like, okay, well, you're 4 months out from a surgery. You're a very serious surgery where they cut out more of my femur. But you're able to put, mind over matter. You're able to control yourself, mentally and emotionally so that you can accomplish anything physically. And some of these big mountains actually have snow on them, So I realized I could combine this humanitarian aspect of going to all these other countries, helping the local people there. I could have, the thrill and the rush and the suffering of being on the big mountains. And then at the very end of the day, I could still incorporate snowboarding in some way, shape, or form. And that moment on, I just didn't stop. I went forth, and I was doing back-to-back climbs. I'd be home for 3 months and I'd be off to another country. 4 months after Africa, I went down to Indonesia and climbed Karstens. And then I went over to Nepal to scope out Everest and, snowboard the highest mountain in Europe called Everest over in Russia. And it just escalated so quickly.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And, you go from, we're getting into mountaineering too, but you actually did a 1,000-mile walk on your injured leg. How did you get involved with that event? What inspired that to take this 1,000-mile walk on your injured leg?
I think again, it was just being able to pay it forward. And I knew early on that I was going to lose my leg. Doctors came in right when I got to San Diego and said, we're going to chop it off. And my mind was like, absolutely not. You're not cutting it off right now. You're going to fix my face. You're going to fix my spine. I'm going to learn to talk again. I'm going to learn how to reuse my brain, and then you can chop my leg off. And so, I went, oh God, I don't even know how many surgeries I went through on my leg, 12, 14, somewhere in there. And it was just, constantly having to relearn how to walk and the whole nine. And I had finally got to that point where they were like, you've prolonged the inevitable for literally as long as possible now, Mm-hmm. And I think part of me, especially as a young lady, dealing with kind of the self-image stuff, and not even necessarily being super concerned with what I was going to be able to do physically, but again, the self-image, I decided that I wanted to give my leg one last hurrah. And I ended up taking 10 weeks to walk 1,000 miles across England, Scotland, and Wales to raise money, for American and British troops. Obviously I have some history with the Brits, and really just raised funds so that, we can actually heal together. And I did that in support of an organization called Walking with the Wounded. And and then after that, that expedition or whatever you want to call it, that event, I came home and within a week I had my leg chopped off, for lack of better terms.
It just mentally and emotionally, how do you even prepare for something like that? Because you went through it twice. You went through the surgery and then not too long later you had to have above the knee. How does somebody mentally and emotionally, how do you even get prepared to deal with something like that? So traumatic.
Man, I think going into the first one, I had the time to truly process what was taking place. And I was at complete ease with knowing that I tried. Everyone said, you're going to lose your leg. And I said, well, I want to exhaust every resource that I have available. And when it gets to that point, then you can have it. But I wanted to know that I tried. And so when I went into that first surgery, I honestly wasn't even afraid. Of course, when I woke up, I felt this loss, and I realized that I was going to have to learn how to walk and run and balance and all these things all over again. But I was honestly at peace with everything that had happened. Now, when, a month or so later, when now I have, there was severe malpractice in what took place. I won't even get into all of it, but I ended up losing 14 more inches of my leg. And when I went under for that next surgery to save my life, they told me that I was going to lose my hip. If you do come out of this, if you do wake up on Christmas in 2015, you won't have a hip. And I just remember screaming bloody murder. If I don't have my hip, do not wake me up again, because I could not imagine life. I can't even imagine life like that now. And I mean, it was just sheer terror. And then, they knocked me out. And then I woke up and I had, oh gosh, I probably had at least another 12 I still had 12 inches of femur. So when I actually woke up, I was just overwhelmed with gratitude. I was so upset that everything that I had mentally prepared for with being a below the knee amputee was gone. Being a below the knee amputee and being an above the knee amputee is night and day. I mean, I would sell my soul to the devil to get my knee back at this point. Life is incredibly challenging. There's nothing easy about my days anymore. But when I woke up and I had what I had, I was just grateful. I knew life was still going to be hard, but I knew that I was going to have it a lot easier than what I was originally anticipating. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody could ever be prepared for any kind of loss. I mean, whether that's a limb or a parent or a pet or any, I don't know what that really looks like, but I do know that people need to be grateful for whatever it is, whether it was time or memories or, everything that you have to look forward to. People need to start counting their blessings just a little bit more, or again, counting their blessings with the individual or the person or whatever physical objects it is that they may be losing.
I think it's such a great lesson that you've been teaching all the way through this, is that you always can change your focus. And that's what's amazing is, you're talking about, I focused on gratitude. Where you're in the hospital, you focus on helping other people. And, I think nobody can prepare like you're saying, but everybody has the power of what they focus on. And I think that's what's so powerful about your life, is you have modeled that, saying, here's where I'm putting my focus. I could focus on all the negative, but I'm looking forward to the positive. And thinking about all these amazing climbs on the route to completing the 7 summits, eventually Mount Everest. Can you share with us, what is your favorite climb? I mean, you've had all these experiences. What is your favorite climb? And then can you tell us about your epic Everest journey? Because you made it so far, What was your favorite climb? And then tell us a little bit about that epic journey on Everest.
Yeah, well, so I think what's special about the 7 summits especially is every single one of them are so different. There are no two that are similar, and they all teach you something very different. So on Everest, it honestly was patience for people. Done in Indonesia, it was an extremely technical climb, far more technical than Everest ever will be. Everest, obviously, just patience in general. You're out there for so long. Aconcagua, learning how to deal with extreme altitude, all, a number of different things. But hands down, my favorite one has been Kirstie Ennis, and that's one down in Indonesia. And the reason isn't what most people would think. The reason it became my favorite, I summited. It was absolutely brutal. I mean, everything about the climb was brutal. I got stuck in a blizzard. The local tribes ransacked our base camp. It was absolute shit for a climb. When I came back over what's called these Tyrolean traverses, so these steel cables and ropes that suspend, these huge gaps in the mountains, I hit the top of a rappel section. And I was freezing. My hands were literally not working anymore. We're soaked. And I looked down, and it's pitch black out, mind you. I looked down, And there's all these ropes, and out in some of these third world countries, the climbing standards aren't the same as what they are here.
Okay.
And so you're looking at these ropes and you have to pick the right rope or else you're going to rappel off to your death. And I don't know what it was, but I just started crying. Like I sat there and I was like, I literally asked myself, what the fuck are you doing? And my camera guy, there's videos of all this, but my camera guy turns off the camera and he puts it down and looks at me and he was like, remember all those plaques and those graves that you passed? He was like, this is where people die. Like, this is it. Like, we will die if you don't get your shit together. And so in that moment, like, I jokingly say that I found Jesus that day, and, that I felt everything. Literally, I felt being afraid and anxious and ecstatic because I had just summited. Like, it was just this crazy amount of emotion that it was like, I was so close to death that I actually felt the most alive. Like I actually have a tattoo on my arm from one of my favorite books now that says Die Living, and it's from that climb. And so I think that surprises most people because, people would be like, oh, what about Everest or Denali or any of the other ones? But Karstein's was just this one that, man, I didn't feel all of those emotions like since I was in Afghanistan and stuff. So that one's always been near and dear to my heart. Everest, though, that was actually just last year in April and May of 2019. And it was quite the adventure, to say the least. I climbed from the south side, so from Nepal. And first, just let me give all the credit in the world to the Nepalese people. They were so supportive, like from the moment I was in Kathmandu, up to Lukla and up to the Kumbh region. The Nepalese people were just so curious about me and just they wanted to see me summit so bad. Like I remember walking out through some of these villages and they're like, well, what happened? Kind of took the wind out of my sails a little bit. But no, so I normally how people climb from the south side is they do what's called climbing high and sleeping low to be able to acclimatize. So the Sherpa people who were with me, my two climbing partners actually, we would climb up and then they would go back down. And I actually spent a month above 20,000 feet, which, could be a world record at this point. Who knows? And that was very rare. I sat in a tent by myself, just alone in one of the most dangerous places in the world. And I would just be, I had a little notebook and I had, a couple of books that were ripped up into pieces so that I could, read them and swap out with other people. But for the most part, it was just me up there eating expired MREs. It was disgusting. But on the actual summit rotation, my team was one of the first teams up. Originally we thought that we were going to go for one of the very last weather windows. So that way we would have a booter or a boot pack all the way up to the summit. But the reality of that was there were so many people on Everest last year that I don't think that I would have had enough oxygen if I got stuck behind all of them. I wouldn't have even made it up to where I did. So after we all put our heads together, we were like, to hell with it. We're going to go for, the very first. And we chased the whole way up, what they're called the ice doctors and the ice fixers, rope fixers. And the whole way up, I was post-holing, going straight down into the snow when normally it's this huge staircase for one of the last teams. And I got my ass handed to me, but there was never a moment I thought that I had it. I was 600 feet from the top, 600 feet. And I remember I just kept telling myself you got it, you're already done, and I was probably, 20, 25 feet above where my guys were because I was just cruising up the line. And I didn't feel anybody on my line anymore. I had my two climbing partners and one Sherpa with us. And I looked down and the Sherpa starts coming up to me. His name is Sange. And he's like, hey, you and me are going to keep going up, but the two guys are going down. And I was like, no freaking way. That's not going to happen. He was like, we have enough oxygen for us, but not enough for them. So they're going down. And in my mind, I had already made it this far over the course of 2 months with these two guys. There's no way I was going to summit without them. They were just as much a part of my story, my expedition, that whole journey. I just looked down and don't get me wrong, it was hard. I cried, but I wouldn't be able to live with myself if something happened to them on the way down. So yeah, I swallowed my pride and I said, all right, let's head down.
Epic stuff. People are listening to this, getting fired up. What do you learn about yourself spending in so much time in solitude up on the mountain? I mean, it's
Um,
crazy to think about that when people start to evaluate what that really is like. It's not as glamorous probably as people think. It's hard. It's
yeah.
discipline. It's brutal. What do you learn about yourself in solitude like that?
I don't know. I mean, you honestly really learn like what you're made of and like what you can actually do to keep yourself distracted.
Mhm.
Like I think just like, whether you're confined, like when I was confined to the hospital, you can sit here and you can let negative thoughts consume you, or you can say, okay, how do I mitigate these, or how do I mediate them? And what can I be doing in the meantime that's actually going to positively impact me? So for me, like I wrote every day on Everest. And like if you haven't read those yet, go read those because they're pretty damn funny. But or just reading or reflecting and telling like creating goals and saying, okay, what did you learn from this experience? Or how are you going to, use what you learned and help other people? And some of my best and worst ideas were created on Everest. But there were days I would just sit in my tent and do crunches. Like, that was
Crazy.
it. Like, I mean, there was just nothing else to do because you can't get out of your tent and walk around. You're falling into a crevasse with nobody else. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just, again, being able to sit with yourself and reflect on where you've been and where you want to go.
Unbelievable. Can you tell us about the Kirstie Ennis Foundation? How did this come into being? For people that don't know, tell us about what it involves and how they can get involved or find out more about it.
Yeah, so I mean, like I mentioned, in 2016, 2017, I had really committed to just raising money for certain initiatives and projects that have, either helped me out or helped out other communities that I was passionate about, veterans, disabled, so on and so forth. Um, and eventually, like to be transparent, I was losing donations for some of these other organizations because I didn't have my own 501c3. So eventually I kind of got backed into a corner and was like, all right, I'm going to do the one thing that I told myself I wasn't going to do, start my own nonprofit. And I did it. And it's been one of the most challenging, sometimes miserable, but most rewarding things. So we're 100% volunteer based. No one makes a dime from it. I don't use any donations to fund any of my expeditions. But what we do is we provide other people opportunities in the outdoors. So whether it's education, healing, or learning a new recreational therapy in the outdoors. And then we also outfit individuals with the medical devices that they need, whether they're new and we can outfit them and provide them with those, or I literally go around and collect used prosthetics, refurbish them, and then recycle them to the areas that we climb in.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a lot of work to say the least. But since we were just talking about Everest, one of my prouder moments was on Everest. I actually decided that I wanted to help the local community there, and so I sought out the Center for Disabled Children's Assistance over in Kathmandu. And I committed to giving them a large grant to be able to outfit 25 amputee orphans with prosthetics, and then to also help them facilitate the first ever wheelchair program in Nepal. So, been busy, but again, all very rewarding.
Amazing. What was it like? And this is a real interesting thing. What was it like to be on the ESPN body issue cover? To be that
Uh,
cover person? I mean, what's that like, or what does that how does that affect you?
well, so initially when ESPN reached out to me, I was like, oh my God, absolutely not. My grandparents will kill me. My parents will disown me. But then after I did a little soul searching, again, I was like, you know what? There are a lot of people out there who are struggling with self-image and being able to love themselves, even though they're different. And there's a lot of other people who lack the courage to try something new because they instantly tell themselves that they can't. So when I realized that I actually had this very unique opportunity to be the first, woman amputee on a cover, to be the first veteran ever featured, to be the first rock climber ever featured, that's when I was like, you know what, you can deal with your family being a little upset at first. And quite frankly, I initially I didn't know that I was going to be on the cover. So when they actually called me, ironically on my Alive Day of the anniversary of me getting hurt, and told me that I took the cover, I just sobbed. And again, I caught a little bit of backlash from my family, but the most rewarding thing that I've been given through all of this is like parents reaching out to me and saying, you gave hope to my daughter, you inspired my son to do this, or even just, young adults, or even, heck, people that are decades older than me reaching out and saying, hey, I saw what you're doing. I see what you're doing. And you're changing lives. And I don't like to think that I'm changing lives. I like to think that I'm impacting or improving them. But that's hands down was the coolest thing about it. Still really weird to see your butt cheeks on the cover of a magazine, but
I bet you that's got to be weird. It's got to be surreal. For sure. Like you're like, hey, that is me.
Yep, that's it.
I love your mantras. I love some of these reflect on who you are, what you have to offer, give more than you can get. My favorite is there are no boundaries. We want to help people, show the world that we control our circumstances. They do not control us. These are all, birthed out of who you are. And there's more. How did you develop these mantras? These really seem to be like birthed out of your soul, literally.
No, well, thank you. No, honestly, it's just a reflection of where I've been and what I've been through. I think one of the biggest blessings that I've gotten out of all of this is just being able to reflect, being able to look back and say, hey, you were at some pretty low spots and now look at where you are. And I think if there's any gift that I can give anybody is just to remind them, to your point, that, yeah, we can't control what this crazy world's going to throw at us. We can't control every little detail of our life, but we can control how we react, how we respond. One of my mantras, like the thing that literally has gotten me through even the worst days now, is it's the 6 inches between your ears and what's behind your rib cage that dictate what we're capable of. And for me, that is a direct reflection of who I am, keeping your head and your heart in the right place at all times, because that's what's going to be able to, remind you or even force you to put one foot in front of the other to continue, moving along in the right direction.
Awesome. Last question. It's a two-parter.
Okay.
What's next for you? If there is anything, you've accomplished so much, but it's even looking at you, it all seems like the wheels are always turning with you. What's next for Kirstie, and where can people find out more about you, the foundation, and anything else that you would like to share with the listeners today?
Yeah, for sure. Well, just like everybody else out there, COVID changed a lot for me too. COVID totally derailed my entire 2020. Everything from I, had to sell 2 of my businesses in California, which ironically led me to opening a couple other ones, strangely. I was supposed to be climbing the tallest point in North America back in May. I was supposed to be climbing or going down to Antarctica in December to climb and snowboard Mount Vincent down. Unfortunately, those were both taken away from me for 2020. And of course, like everybody else, like 2021's up in the air. But I'm being optimistic for 2021 at least, and crossing my fingers that in May of 2021, I'll actually be climbing Denali, the highest point in North America. And then I actually aspire to do what's called the World Marathon Challenge. So 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days. I'd like to do the Great Divide Ride, 2,600-mile transcontinental mountain bike ride. And then I'd like to bring it all the way back to the UK. And I would really love to swim the English Channel. So definitely always have ideas, definitely always have lists. Again, not going to get my hopes too far up with COVID. But again, just keep your eyes up and keep striving for the future, keep making goals, and you got to roll with the punches. I think none of us really know how resilient we are until we're actually in the thick of it. So for everybody out there, I'm proud of you. We're all in this one together. You're not alone in any of it. And to answer your final question, to find out more about me, to follow along on my journeys, to see what the foundation is up to, you can find the foundation on Facebook and Instagram, just again, real original, the Kirstie Ennis Foundation. And then you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram. And again, it's just my name, Kirstie Ennis.
Unbelievable. I want to thank our guest, Kirstie Ennis, for investing, and it was a true investment in all of our listeners today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
I also want to thank our sponsors, ZionMissionaryChurch.net, NeuroPowerSource.com, our podcast producer, Drew Kiesbert, video production, Jolynn Thomas, head of talent relations, Mr. Fairfax Hackley. Be sure to rate us and subscribe to the Pressing Limits podcast and follow us on Instagram. For more ways to watch and listen to this podcast, check out the Pressing the Limits podcast website.